The Babysitter's Last Night on Elm Street. It was just another night on Elm Street, or so it seemed. The street had that typical quiet suburban charm, rows of houses lined up like perfect replicas, each with their front lights dimmed, casting a soft glow on the immaculate sidewalks. But there was something unsettling about this particular night. An unspoken heaviness clung to the air, like the earth itself was holding its breath. Emily, a young babysitter, was heading to the last house on Elm Street, a sprawling old mansion with windows like dark eyes that seemed to follow her every move. The family she was sitting for was well known, their wealth imprinted in the carefully manicured lawn and freshly painted fences. Yet there was something about this house. She couldn't put her finger on it, but the moment she stepped onto the porch, a shiver crawled up her spine. She rang the doorbell, and within moments the door creaked open. A middle-aged woman greeted her with a warm smile, but her eyes seemed distant, tired, like they had witnessed too much. "Thank you for coming, dear," she said in a voice that trembled ever so slightly. "We won't be long. Please make yourself comfortable." She handed Emily a key to the house and disappeared into the night without another word. As Emily entered the house, she felt the oppressive silence weigh down on her. The walls, adorned with ancient paintings of long-forgotten faces, seemed to watch her as she moved. The grand staircase loomed like a gaping mouth, its shadows swallowing any light that dared approach. A chill skittered down her spine, but she shrugged it off. After all, it was just another night of babysitting. Just another night of keeping the kids safe while the parents were out. The children, 2 young boys, were already upstairs, and Emily had been instructed to keep them in their rooms until the parents returned. She wandered through the large, empty halls, her footsteps echoing far too loudly in the silence. The house felt too big, too cold, as if it were hiding something. Something dark. As she reached the staircase, her foot caught on something. She looked down. A small, weathered box sat on the floor, its lid half open. Curiosity tugged at her, and against her better judgment, she crouched down to examine it. Inside, there was nothing but a folded piece of paper. She unfolded it carefully. The words were old, faded with time, and they sent a chill through her bones as she read them aloud. "Beware the hour of midnight. If you hear the whispers, run. Do not look back. Do not go near the mirror." Emily felt a strange sense of dread settle over her. Was it a prank? Or something more? Suddenly, a voice interrupted her thoughts. "Emily, come play with us." It was one of the boys, his voice high-pitched, almost too cheerful. She stood up and turned towards the staircase, but when she looked up, she froze. Standing at the top of the stairs, bathed in shadows, were the 2 boys, too still, too silent. Her heart thudded in her chest. She hadn't heard them come down. "Come play with us," they repeated in unison, their eyes wide and unnaturally bright. Their voices were hollow, like they were being pulled from deep beneath the earth. A flicker of movement in the hallway behind them caught her eye. Something was there. Something tall, shifting, its form indistinguishable from the shadows. Her breath caught in her throat as the thing in the hallway moved closer. The boys' smiles grew wider, stretching impossibly, their teeth too sharp. "We have to show you something," they whispered in perfect harmony. "We have to show you the mirror." At that moment, Emily felt it. That terrifying, undeniable presence. Something that should never have been disturbed. The air grew heavy, suffocating, and the walls seemed to close in on her. The house wasn't just alive with whispers. It was breathing with a hunger that made her stomach churn. But the worst part? Emily could feel it. It was already too late. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to hear what happens next, because you might just regret it. The Babysitter's Last Night on Elm Street continued. Emily's legs trembled, but her mind screamed at her to run. She took a step back, but her feet were rooted to the floor as though the house itself had a hold on her. The boys were still standing at the top of the stairs, their smiles widening further, their eyes gleaming with something malevolent. "Come closer," they whispered. The sound was low, like a hum in her ears, vibrating against her very bones. "We're waiting." Emily's gaze shifted to the hallway. The shadow was still there, watching, shifting. It had no form, only a deep, endless blackness that seemed to devour all light in its path. The floor beneath her feet felt colder, the air growing thinner as though something was sucking the life out of the room. And then she heard it, a whisper from deep within the house, so soft at first she thought it was just her mind playing tricks. But then it grew louder, clearer. It wasn't coming from the boys. It was coming from the mirror. She hadn't noticed it before, but now, standing at the foot of the stairs, she saw it. The mirror, massive, framed in black wood, its glass dark and reflective like a pool of ink, stood at the far end of the hallway. But it wasn't a reflection of the room. No, this mirror held something else. Her heartbeat quickened, and for a split second, she thought she saw the faintest movement within it, a pair of eyes staring back at her. "You've seen it," the boys said in unison, their voices echoing. "It sees you now." Emily's breath caught in her throat. The whispers from the mirror grew louder, clearer. The words weren't just whispers now, they were commands. Unholy commands that pressed against her mind like a vice. "Come closer." The air turned cold, the temperature dropping so fast that she could see her breath mist in front of her. A shadow, stretching impossibly long, crawled across the walls, creeping towards her. It was closer now, close enough for her to feel its presence, like cold fingers trailing down her spine. Emily's body felt paralyzed. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her feet wouldn't move. It was as if the house itself had wrapped her in chains, forcing her to watch, to wait. And then it spoke, its voice deep, guttural, like the groan of something ancient, something cursed. "You should have never come. You've opened the door." Suddenly, the boys vanished, their forms blurring into the shadows. The mirror, once a simple reflection, now pulsed with a life of its own. The whispers grew louder, louder until they became a deafening roar in her ears. The shadows within the mirror stretched forward, reaching out, curling around her like a noose. The glass cracked. Emily screamed, the sound swallowed by the terrifying force emanating from the mirror. It shattered in an explosion of blackness, and before her eyes, something stepped out of the broken shards. A figure, dark and twisted, impossibly tall, with eyes that burned with a hunger that made her skin crawl. It reached for her. Its fingers stretched toward her like the claws of a predatory beast, a presence so overwhelming that she could feel her very soul being torn apart. She wanted to scream, to run, but her body wouldn't obey. She was trapped. "Too late," it whispered, its voice like the wind of a forgotten storm. "Now you're mine." And then darkness. When the authorities arrived the next morning, they found the house empty. No sign of the children. No sign of Emily. The mirror was gone. The walls were silent. But something remained. A note, written in dark ink, scrawled across the living room floor in a language that no one could understand. And the whispers? They never stopped. They lingered, faint but undeniable, in the air. And as for Emily, she never returned. But if you listen closely, you can hear her. Whispers in the night, calling, waiting. And the worst part? You're not alone. Beware the hour of midnight. Don't forget to subscribe. But don't take too long. It may already be too late.